Okay, so just to go over the final project guidelines with you. So several of you asked to do this, asked me to do this on your mid-semester feedback. And so I just wanted to go over this. So option A is the lesson plan for a 90 to 100 minute class. Um, so it can be one that targets specific skills, so a listening class, a speaking class, a reading class, or it can be integrated. So it can target 2 or 3 or 4 skills all at once. Okay, so lesson plan needs to follow a specific format. So I gave you an example of one last week. You can look at that format to kind of get an idea. And so you should have the type of class. So tell me if it's integrated skills, and if it is integrated skills, tell me which skills. The level of the class. So is it advanced? Is it lower intermediate? Is it high intermediate? Is it beginner? Give me some. Let me know more about the students too. So are they children? Are they adults? Are they adolescents? Things like that would be helpful. The topic under discussion. So what's the main focus for the lesson? And then the time that the class takes up. So this should be at the top left-hand corner of the paper, which should be 90 to 100 minutes. The objectives for the lesson should come next. So students will be able to, you can abbreviate it as the SWABAT acronym. And so for this one, it's important that you use verbs that allow for actual observation. So things, so remember that with the objectives, the thing here is that you want to be able to actually assess or observe what's going on. Okay, so verbs like understand, know, or do, or write an essay. So let's start with understand, know, or know. Unless you have some sort of specific way that you can actually measure understanding, it's better to have a more concrete verb that you use there. So you want to steer clear from using things like understand or know, just because they're not directly observable. And so instead of saying things like students will be able to understand the passive voice or the meanings, the different uses of the passive voice, it's better to say something like students will be able to let's see, practice using active voice in class activities, for instance. So you want to make sure that it's observable. Okay, so using the word like understandable or understand or know doesn't make it observable. Having them actually pointing them to actual activities, or using verbs like practice or apply or something like that. So something that you can actually see. Okay, so do often is a little bit too vague. So you want to use other verbs and to replace that actually show exactly what they're going to be doing. And then saying things like students will be able to write an essay, not very helpful. So I mean, that's going to be just like a very big task, and so often like that's not a good objective. Okay, so for this, you want to make sure to take up some time to actually figure out what the objectives are. Once you come up with a list, I'm happy to have you send it to me so I can look at it, so that I can help you edit it if you need to. In fact, I would highly encourage you to do that, just because these are probably the hardest things to come up with before you actually start looking at the rest of the lesson. Okay. Let's see. The next thing that comes is a list of required materials. Yeah, so this is all materials that you'll need, including the whiteboard or chalkboard or computer. You'll list all those here. And then you'll have the handouts. So list all the handouts in the appendix. So handout 1, and then say which appendix it's in. And each of those handouts, when you actually include them, they should have Appendix A, Appendix B, like labeled at the top corner. Okay, so remember for this, you have to come up with your own required materials. Okay, so there's not really a limit in how many, but you'll probably need at least 2 or 3 that you'll need to come up with on your own. Something that, yeah, so something to note too. So your handouts don't need to be perfect, but they should be pretty well written for the assignment. Okay, so if there's some errors in there, or if they're not spectacular, I wouldn't worry about it, because I know that it takes a long time to develop these, and I know you're busy with other classes. But I do want you to put in a strong effort in developing them. So the more effort you put in them now, you can actually, it's a strong likelihood that you'll be able to use them later on. So I really suggest that you do as much as possible with them. And then the procedures. Okay, so describe the procedures in detail, and provide estimated times for each activity. Okay, so you want to be very clear in what you're doing. So details would include what the teacher is going to say to them, what types of questions are going to be asked, how the students are going to be arranged. So are they going to be doing things independently? Are they going to be working in groups? How are the groups going to be formed? Things like that. Okay, so all of those things you want to really consider. You have to really split the situation down. You have to split hairs kind of to figure out what you're going to be doing. This is something that it should be replicable by other teachers. So if you wrote this lesson plan and you gave it to a fellow teacher, would they be able to do this exactly like you did it? Okay, so be very detailed. It's best to split this up by activity. So do, like, for number 1, do activity 1, whatever that is. So a lot of times that's like review or agenda, telling the students what the agenda is. And then list the steps for that activity. And then go on to activity 2. And then activity 3, activity 4, and so on. Okay. So that's the main part of the lesson plan, is just kind of the actual lesson plan itself, developing all of this stuff. And then the rationale comes next. Okay, so for your lesson, you need to write approximately 6-page rationale, explaining the theoretical basis behind your materials, activities, and sequence. So you want to explain how this relates to motivation, and you want to explain your reasoning for choosing a certain order. Okay. So you want to use theory to kind of back up your decisions. This should be focused on the motivational theories we've discussed in class, though you are welcome to expand this to use other motivational theories we haven't come across if you wish. Do not take up space to discuss theories outside of motivation. I want to see what so if you have other theories from SLA, you can briefly mention them, but I would prefer that you try not to. So avoid those and actually focus just on motivational theories if you can. Of course, you can ask me if you think that mentioning another theory would be worthwhile. I can suggest whether or not it's a good idea if you email me, or talk to me in Skype over our Skype meeting with it as well. That's something else to consider. Yeah, so I want to see, don't take up space to discuss theories outside of motivation. I want to see you thought this through and understand how to apply motivational theory to your teaching. And for the rationale, you should aim to explain the importance of the topic or lesson for your learners, the motivational theories you're seeking to apply, how your activities connect to these theories, and then the general sequence of events in this class and how this all relates to your objectives. Okay, so the rationale can be split up across different sections of the lesson plan. You could have subheadings for objectives, one for materials and one for procedures. So you can look at the examples that I provided for the rationale and the lesson plan. So the rationale example that I provided is a lot shorter. It's like 2 pages long. But yeah, yours is going to have to be around 6 pages. I know one person mentioned on their mid-semester evaluation that they said that they thought it was unfair that you had to do. It seemed like there was a misunderstanding. So they thought that the lesson plan, developing a lesson plan, writing a 12-page rationale or something was they thought it was unreasonable to think that that was the same as writing a 12-page literature review. I think the misunderstanding was, so the rationale is shorter than the literature review. So in essence, between the lesson plan and writing the rationale is around the same amount of work as writing a literature review. Okay, so they should be very comparable in nature. Okay, so that takes care of that. For the most part, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You can look at the examples I've provided. I'll also be providing a link to some sites that discuss how to write a lesson plan up, and I think you should probably look into those if you're going to do this option. Option B is the literature review, right? So several of you are doing this. So this requires that you write a 10 to 12 page literature review on a topic of your choosing. And you'll need to do use the following guidelines. So you'll need to include at least 10 references related to your topic. I would suggest more. I always suggest more. I know this is something that people get to 10 and they'll just stop looking. I really suggest don't be lazy on this, just because the more you have, the easier this will end up being to write. At least 7 should be research from a peer-reviewed journal. Okay, so all of them should be from peer-reviewed journals, but 7 of them should be research. Okay, so some sort of a study that's been conducted. Okay, the other 3 could be review articles if you wanted them to be, but they should all be from peer-reviewed journals. In fact, I'll rewrite this to make it a little bit clearer for that. And then the topic must be narrow and manageable. So as long as you turned in your proposal, I've given you feedback on that. And then you have to include a statement of the topic you intend to cover, and why the topic is of interest. So why is this important? Thorough review of the literature on your topic, including appropriate citations. So follow APA style. Okay. This goes for the rationale as well. So you need to have you need to use some citations as well and follow APA style. You also have to provide your own reflections and suggestions for future research or practice. And as a literature review, like number 2 should be the primary portion of the paper. Okay, so that's about it right there. I would say start working immediately if you have not started doing so. You'll also need to sign up for a meeting with me on Skype for the second week after spring break. So we won't have an actual lecture or anything that week, but you will all be meeting with me on Skype. Okay. So at that point, I'll give you a little bit more detail about that over the next couple of days of what you'll be expected to have. But yeah, so I would say be prepared to have at least some parts of your papers done so that I can look at them, and you have to send them to me ahead of time. Okay. Yeah, so that's about it. If you don't have if you have questions, you can email me. You can also actually don't email them to me. Post them on the discussion forum on the website. Okay, so I'll have a discussion forum that's open under this, and then yeah, so I'll check those daily or every other day to answer questions, and I think that's it. So good luck on this, and just let me know if you have any questions.